What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Final K, and today I'm bringing you guys a video on the top 5 things that I would like to see change going into Season 6 for us solo laners. I think most people would agree with some of these changes. I just think that the meta for the solo lane in the past season in Season 5 was pretty stale, and solo didn't really have a lot of things going for it, especially the warrior class. So I just want to talk about some things that, you know, if it changes going into Season 6, then it will definitely help out the role overall. However, I do not think that every single one of these changes needs to be implemented. I'd say about 2 of them, a minimum of 2 will actually do, and would be a good starting point to see how we'll do in the meta and everything like that going into the next season, Season 6. So don't think that we have to change all 5 of these things, because I think that would be too much change, and then it would end up making it even worse. So I'd say about a minimum of 2 of these changes to be implemented, and it would be really good and healthy for the solo lane going into Season 6. So let's get right into those changes. I think the first thing we need to take a look at is the strength of percent pen and percent health items for both physical and magical. So let's get right into that. For the physical, I think that Executioner, Titan's Bane, Skin Size, items like this are just really strong right now. Skin Size not so much, because crit is kind of in the meta. Crit's kind of been really good because of Poison Star and stuff like that. However, Executioner and Titan's Bane, even on junglers, but specifically on ADCs, is just a ridiculous amount of pen. At least for physical, it's a little bit more expensive, because for magical, they have a cheaper build curve with these items. But even combined together, even though they're not the most efficient item combo in the game, because one of these reduces the percent of the other, you still see them often bought together, because basically it reduces about 50%, a little bit more than 50% of the gold that a tank spends on their items. So, you know, you're a tank player, you're spending your gold on tank items so that you can, you know, tank the enemy team's abilities, their autos, you know, towers and stuff like that, and then their carries completely negate like 50% of the gold you spend just by buying 2 of these items, or even one of these items will negate 36% in Executioner if you get the stacks up. So it's just a ridiculous amount of penetration, which in most cases it's necessary, because we don't want to have a tank meta where everyone's just running around with tank items and nobody can die. But the fact of the matter is, this combined with the fact that magicals have a very easy build curve to get to their percent pen items and their tank killing items, and the fact that you don't really lose a lot of damage on squishies to begin with. So usually when you think about it, the way it should be balanced is, if you're building it to be able to kill tanks, you should lose something in the way of trying to go on squishies. But that doesn't really happen. I mean, the stats are still good: 30 fizz power plus 25% attack speed, and then of course the percent pen passive. This is a little bit less good against squishies. However, most of your other items will be decent against them, and then all you have to do is invest into 1% pen item, and then bam, you're already doing 40% extra physical penetration to their tanks. I mean, that's just one item. It's 2,300 gold, and you're negating 40% of the enemy tank's gold. It's just a ridiculous amount of pen, and we need to look at these items in some way or another. Skin Size, like I said, not as much in favor right now, but it's still very good, especially when enemy team is building a lot of health, and health is a very important stat. So if you just read the passive, it's going to scale up a lot, and you're going to end up chunking, especially if you have these other pen items, because Skin Size does work off of your own penetration. So we got to look at these somehow. They're just way too good, and there's not really a drop off for going items that hard kill tanks. So like I said, I think magicals, it's a little bit better, or I guess depending on who you are, worse. For us solo laners, it's a little bit worse for us, because the build path for these mages is just ridiculously cheap, and not only that, it's ridiculously effective against everyone on the map. So we're talking about items like Spear the Magus, 2,300 gold, Obsidian Shard, it's only 2,150 gold. I mean, this item literally negates 45% of the enemy's magical protections if they build up to 200 prots. That's 45% of the gold they spend is just completely gone by an item that costs 2,150 gold. Like, it's like one of the cheaper items, honestly, for a mage. And then items like Soul Reaver, this was recently nerfed, but it's still a ridiculous item. Ethereal I think is actually in a good spot. It's not as bad as the other ones, but I mean, it's still percent health off your damage is kind of ridiculous. And then you can go items like things to stack on top of this, like Soul Gem and stuff, just on hit effects that, bam, if you CC a tank and you just use all your abilities on them, they're going to end up dying, just because of the amount of penetration that these items have, and the amount of extra damage you do through the health percentages. So I mean, the big one is obviously Obsidian Shard. It's only 2150 gold. You know, Soul Reaver is expensive, but like I said before with the physicals, it's even more so true for the magicals. You don't really lose any damage on the enemy squishies, because Spear of the Magus makes you do true damage to any squishy on the map, because if you read the passive and the penetration that it gives you 15 flat pen, but it can also give you up to 50 pen reduction. So pretty much every squishy on the map is going to be getting true damage done to them if you have Spear of the Magus procced on them, the passive. So you're not really losing any of your damage for the squishies. And not only that, I mean, if you're a character that can proc Spear of the Magus, you have Obsidian Shard, and you have a Soul Reaver, you're basically doing the same amount of damage that you would to a squishy to a tank if you have all that shred on them, because just a ridiculous amount of gold lost for that enemy tank. You know, I mean, 45% here, like we said, and then the 50 flat prot reduction here plus the 15 pen. I mean, that's just so much of the enemy tank characters magical protection is gone. So we really need to take a look at these items, because if we take a look at these items and nerf them a bit and make them more in line, at least make it so there's some downfall to building these items or rushing these items, or make them a little bit more expensive, then it's really going to help out the state of solo and how much they can be impactful in team fights without just getting blown up instantly. The second thing I want to see change going into Season 6 is a buff to the Warrior class. Throughout the entirety of Season 5, Warriors were pretty much in the worst spot, the least played class, especially in the solo lane. Guardians just outshine them for the most part, and even mages, sometimes even assassins. So we just need to see buffs to individual characters. You have to be a little bit careful with it, because if the meta shifts toward a pressure meta, then Warriors are going to be a little bit better. They're going to go into a higher spot and a higher favorability. However, with the development of meta and just the way the game's been played, a lot of these characters aren't even bullies anymore. A lot of mages and even guardians can bully them in lane, and sometimes even assassins. So their niche role in the fact that you know, they were originally picked so that they can have early pressure and then they can fight early on and be monsters in the mid game, has kind of fallen off. So we need to buff some of these characters, especially gods like Tyr, gods like Juan. We just saw Vamana buff, which is really good. I think that's a step in the right direction. Chalk, some of these characters that are just been unfavorable for a very, very long time. Nike even, and even some of the gods that, you know, you would think don't really need buffs, stuff like Cocoa and Bellona, Osiris and stuff like that. I think all these characters can easily get bullied in lane by things that really shouldn't bully them, and the fact that their lane game isn't very, very strong compared to like some assassins, mages, is kind of rough as a frontliner. So I do think we just need to see some buffs to these individual characters. Nothing too crazy, like I said, because if the meta shifts towards pressure, they're going to be a little bit more favorable. However, I do want to see small buffs here and there. And it's just, they just get outshined by Guardians late game. I mean, their late game compared to most of the Guardians is just abysmal. To gods like Sobek, even something like Ardeo, who's like basically like the best warrior if she was a warrior. Sobek, wait, did I already say Sobek? Sobek, Geb, Terra mainly. I mean, these gods just completely outshine these characters. So would like to see individual buffs to their kits. I do have some ideas, but that should probably be for another video. So you know, number 2, buff to warriors. The third thing I definitely want to see change going into Season 6 is a shift away or a nerf to anti-fighting starter items. And what I mean by that is just a nerf to things like Guardian's Blessing and Warrior's Blessing. Both these starter items have been super stale for the solo lane. It's basically discouraged any sort of fighting early on, any sort of micro play or micro outplay, I should say, especially small mechanical things and matchups and stuff like that. Matchups have mattered least in the history of Smite. Right now in Season 5, they've mattered the least they ever have. And just, you know, micro things that you do in lane don't really matter that much and don't amount to many things. So I want to see a shift back towards the Destal and Bluestone meta, where everyone was either going Destal or Bluestone, and sometimes even Mark the Vanguard if you're playing a Guardian, but you could still punish them for going that item. So I just want to see a shift back towards that. It's going to really promote fighting and everything like that. Because Guardian's Blessing and Warrior's Blessing at the beginning of Season 5, not so much anymore. It's not too good of an item now. But Guardian's Blessing specifically, both of these items just heavily discourage fighting early on and don't really help with like micro outplays and stuff like that really shines and really distinguishes really good solo laners from, you know, amateur solo laners. So I think it's really hard to tell right now because of these items. So a shift away from these starter items and more towards things that can fight, or at least somewhere in between where you can play something that for the late game, but you really have to play it perfectly in order to pull it off. Whereas right now with Guardian's Blessing, you can get away with pretty much anything in the solo lane. So I do like the fact that there's a lot of variety in solo lane right now as far as like God Pool and everything like that, but we just need to find a healthy medium between Death Stool Warriors and Guardian's Blessing Guardians, right? Somewhere in between would be really nice if we can find that by nerfing items like the anti-fighting starter items, as I like to call them. Fourth thing I really want to see change going into Season 6 is a map change around the solo lane. The good news about this is that they have hinted, they being Titanforge or Hi-Rez or whatever, have hinted that they are adding something around the solo lane. I don't think it's going to be an XP or gold value camp or anything like that, because I think that's smart as well, because we don't want to promote just like snowball lanes where you're just building, you're just playing like a Death Stool Warrior and you're just trying to snowball the lane as hard as possible. So I'm glad that they're going that route, but I do want to see a bit of a map change, and I'm happy that they're kind of going that route with the solo lane, just so that there's a little bit more reward for winning your lane early on, just a little bit. Nothing too crazy, nothing to snowball the lane out of control, but it's just something around that solo lane that promotes a little bit more fighting early on, a little bit more impact for the entire team when you're winning your lane. Because right now, if you're winning your lane in solo and your dual lane is not doing too well, you're not really going to have much of an impact on the game or even your mid jungle. So for that matter, just a little bit of a change around the solo lane. Could be a pathing thing, could just be, you know, a little camp that gives your team something overall. One of those things can be really good for the state of the meta, in my opinion. The last thing I really want Hi-Rez to continue to do, as long as King Arthur is a really fun and skillful god, is to keep introducing and implementing gods that have high skill ceilings. It takes a while to learn. They aren't just button smashing gods where you click all your buttons and you instantly win a team fight or anything like that. I want gods with auto attack cancels, with high learning ceilings, where it takes a while for you to really master the god and really understand the best way to play the god. You know, just a shift away from gods like Ardio, who was introduced, I think, during Season 5 or Season 4. I'm not really, I think maybe Season 4. Whatever the case, a shift away from gods like that and more towards gods that require a lot of thought, a lot of mechanical prowess and stuff like that. Hopefully King Arthur will be along those lines. We'll have to wait and see. He hasn't been released yet. But if he is, I want Hi-Rez to keep doing stuff like that and releasing gods that require a lot of thought and, you know, practice to really master them. And that's pretty much it, guys. Those are my 5 changes I want to see going into Season 6. I know I've probably said that about 5 times now, but those are all the changes I would really like to see, and I think a lot of you guys would agree with that, just to really help out the solo lane specifically. So this is what I want to see for us solo laners, and hopefully some of these things will be implemented. Like I said at the beginning of the video, hopefully only about 2 of these things will be implemented, because I think any more and it would make not only make solo lane overpowered, but it would really mess things up as far as the meta goes. So just implement a couple changes, maybe 1 or 2, and then see what that does, see if that really helps out, makes the solo lane meta a lot healthier, and then take it from there. So that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you agree with the changes in the comments below. Leave me some feedback. Let me know if you like this style of video. I really would appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.